They say money can't buy happiness, but it can buy silence. It can buy walls so high that the rest of the world disappears. It can buy a staff of 50 people who know exactly how to vanish into the background when you walk into a room. My name is Josef Cargill, and since I took over the company, I've been buying silence by the acre. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of my study, looking down at the sprawling lawn that stretched out like a green ocean. In 48 hours, that pristine grass would be trampled by 300 pairs of designer shoes, the annual Cargill Summer Gala. To the press, it was the event of the season. To my business partners, it was a networking goldmine. To me, it was a suffocating parade of fake smiles, hollow compliments, and people who looked at me and saw nothing but a walking bank account. I adjusted the cuff of my bespoke Italian suit, feeling the familiar tightness in my chest. It wasn't a medical condition. It was just life. The life of a billionaire CEO who had forgotten what it felt like to have a conversation that didn't involve a contract or a favor. If you've ever felt like you're screaming in a room full of people but no one can hear you, then you know exactly why I'm telling you this story. And if you believe that true worth isn't measured by the price tag on your clothes, I need you to like this video right now. Let's see how many of us still believe in character over currency. And don't forget to subscribe, because what happened at this party changed my life, and I want you to be there for the ending. The study was cold. It was always cold. The air conditioning was set to a precise temperature to preserve the antique books and the oil paintings that cost more than most people earn in a lifetime. I turned away from the window and looked at the invitation sitting on my mahogany desk. It was heavy, cream-colored cardstock with gold leaf lettering. Mr. Josef Cargill invites you. I didn't invite anyone. My assistant Beatrice invited them. My PR team invited them. The board of directors invited them. I was just the prop, the centerpiece. I needed air, not the recycled, filtered air of the mansion, but real air. I walked out of the study, bypassing the main staircase. If I went that way, I'd run into the event planners who were currently arguing about the shade of the napkins in the ballroom. I couldn't handle napkin arguments today. I took the servants' stairs at the back of the house. It was quiet there, narrower. It felt more like a home and less like a museum. I slipped out the side door near the kitchens. The heat of the July afternoon hit me instantly, heavy and humid. It was a shock to the system, and I welcomed it. I loosened my tie, unbuttoned the top button of my shirt, and took a deep breath. The smell of roasted garlic and rosemary wafted from the kitchen vents, but underneath that, there was something else. The smell of wet earth, sweet, rich, and alive. I found myself walking toward the East Garden. Historically, the East Garden was the Rose Garden, a perfectly manicured maze of bushes that looked like they were trimmed with nail scissors. My late mother loved it, but since she passed 5 years ago, it had fallen into a sort of polite disrepair. The previous gardeners kept it alive, but they didn't love it. They just maintained it. But today, as I rounded the corner of the hedgerow, I stopped. It didn't look like polite disrepair anymore. It looked chaotic, but a beautiful kind of chaos. There were piles of pulled weeds stacked neatly on a tarp. There were bags of dark, organic compost torn open, spilling their contents onto the thirsty ground. And in the middle of a particularly overgrown bed of hydrangeas, there was a woman. She was on her hands and knees, practically disappearing into the greenery. She wasn't wearing a uniform. The agency usually sent guys in crisp green polos with logos on the chest. This woman was wearing faded denim, overalls that were covered in dirt stains at the knees. Underneath, she wore a simple white t-shirt that had a smudge of soil on the shoulder. Her hair was a riot of curls, the color of chestnuts, tied back with a piece of green garden twine because, apparently, she couldn't find a hair tie. I watched her for a moment. She was humming. It wasn't a song I recognized, just a low, melodic sound that seemed to vibrate in time with her movements. She was digging with a hand trowel, attacking the earth with a vigor that looked exhausting. She pulled out a stubborn root, groaning slightly with the effort, and tossed it onto the pile. Then she sat back on her heels and wiped her forehead with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of dirt right across her temple. She looked happy. That was what stopped me. That was what kept me rooted to the spot in my $5,000 shoes. She was sweating, dirty, working in 90-degree heat, and she looked more at peace than I had felt in a long time. I must have stepped on a twig, or maybe my shadow fell over her because she suddenly stopped humming. She turned her head. When she saw me, she didn't scramble to stand up. She didn't look terrified. She didn't apologize for being there. She just shielded her eyes from the sun with one hand and looked up at me. Her eyes were green, not emerald, not jade. They were the color of moss after a rainstorm, deep, soft, and unpretentious. "You're standing on the mint," she said. Her voice was raspy, dry from the heat. I looked down at my feet. Sure enough, the toe of my Oxford shoe was crushing a small, sprawling plant. "Oh," I said, stepping back quickly. "I apologize." She laughed. It was a short, breathy sound. "Don't apologize to me. Apologize to the mint. It's resilient, though. It'll bounce back. It usually does." She finally stood up then, brushing the dirt off her knees. She was shorter than I expected, the top of her head barely reaching my shoulder. She pulled a pair of thick gardening gloves off her hands and tucked them into the front pocket of her overalls. "I'm Lyla," she said, extending a hand. Then she looked at her hand, realized it was caked in dust, and pulled it back with a sheepish grin. "Actually, better not shake on it. You look expensive. I don't want to ruin the suit." "I'm Joseph," I said. I waited for the recognition. I waited for the shift in her demeanor. Everyone knew the name Cargill. It was on the hospital downtown, the library, the stadium. But Lyla just nodded. "Nice to meet you, Joseph. You work for the house?" I blinked. Yes, in a way." "Cool," she said, turning back to the hydrangeas. "Well, if you have any pull with the kitchen staff, tell them the irrigation system in this sector is shot. These poor girls are thirsty." She gently touched the drooping blue petals of a flower. "I'm hand-watering them for now, but they need a steady drink." She thought I was staff, maybe a butler, maybe an estate manager. A strange, warm feeling spread through my chest. It felt like freedom. "I'll mention it," I said. "You're new? I haven't seen you before." "First day," Lyla said, grabbing her trowel again. "The agency sent me over. Said the usual team was busy prepping the front lawn for some big fancy party on Saturday. So they sent me to the graveyard." "The graveyard? That's what they call this garden," she explained, pointing around. "Because nobody comes here. It's the forgotten zone, which is fine. By me. Plants grow better when you don't have people staring at them all day." She looked at me sideways, a playful glint in her eye. "Unless you're planning on staring all day? Because if you are, grab a shovel. This compost isn't going to spread itself." I stared at the shovel leaning against the stone wall. It was wooden, worn, and splintered. I looked back at the house. I could see Beatrice in the window of the second floor, phone pressed to her ear, pacing frantically. I looked at Lyla, who was already back on her knees, humming again. I took off my jacket. I folded it carefully and laid it on a clean patch of the stone bench. I rolled up my sleeves. "Where do you want the compost?" I asked. Lyla stopped. She looked at me, really looked at me, scanning my face for sarcasm. When she didn't find any, her smile widened. It transformed her face, making the dirt streak on her forehead look like war paint. "Right here at the base," she said. "And don't be shy with it. They're hungry." For the next 2 hours, I didn't think about stock prices. I didn't think about the merger with Tech Global. I didn't think about the 300 strangers coming to drink my champagne. I shoveled manure. My shoes were ruined. My shirt was sticking to my back. My fingernails, usually manicured, were black with grime, and I felt incredible. Lyla didn't ask me about my job. She talked about the soil. She talked about pH levels. She told me a story about a squirrel she was at war with in her own backyard who kept stealing her tomatoes. "He's a criminal mastermind," she said seriously, wiping sweat from her neck. "I call him Napoleon, because he's small, angry, and wants to conquer everything." I laughed. A real belly laugh that hurt my ribs. "Have you tried a trap?" "I can't trap him," she sighed. "I respect him too much. We have a truce now. I leave him the ugly tomatoes, and he leaves me the pretty ones." As the sun began to dip lower, casting long, golden shadows across the garden, the silence between us became comfortable. It wasn't the bought silence of the mansion. It was a shared silence, the kind you earn after good work. "You're not bad at this, Joseph," she said, surveying the freshly mulched bed. "For a guy who looks like he irons his socks." "I don't iron my socks," I defended, leaning on the shovel. "Someone else does that." It was a slip, a hint at my reality. Lyla paused. She looked at my shoes, ruined by the mud. She looked at the expensive fabric of my trousers. The realization flickered in her eyes, but it wasn't the panic I was used to. It was curiosity. "So," she said slowly. You work for the house, but you have someone iron your socks. It's complicated, I said, bracing myself for the change. Okay, she said simply. She didn't push. She didn't pry. Well, complicated, Joseph. Thanks for the help. But you better go clean up. You look like you lost a fight with a swamp. I should probably get back, I admitted. The boss will be looking for me. Right. The big scary Cargill, she teased, rolling her eyes. I heard he eats gravel for breakfast and fires people if they sneeze too loud. Keep your head down. I smiled. It was a tight, secretive smile. I'll try. I grabbed my jacket. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay in this bubble of dirt and mint and honest insults. Will you be here tomorrow? I asked. It came out more desperate than I intended. Lyla stood up, brushing off her overalls. Yep, Napoleon might have the day off, but I don't. I have to tackle the rose bushes next. They've got black spot fungus. I'll see you then, I said. Bring better shoes, she advised. And maybe lose the tie. It's making me anxious just looking at it. I walked back to the house, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm. I entered through the kitchen again. The head chef, Henri, dropped a ladle when he saw me. Monsieur Cargill, he gasped, staring at my mud-spattered shirt. Mon Dieu, are you injured? Did you fall? Should I call the doctor? I'm fine, Henri, I said, grabbing an apple from a bowl on the counter. Just doing a little landscaping. Landscaping? He looked horrified. But sir, we have people for that. Yes, I said, thinking of green eyes and a dirt-streaked forehead. We certainly do. I went up to my room, showered, and scrubbed the dirt from my nails. But as I dressed for dinner, alone, at a table that seated 20, I couldn't get the smell of the garden out of my mind. For the first time in years, I wasn't dreading the next day, but I also knew the clock was ticking. The gala was in 48 hours. The guests were coming, and I had a sinking feeling that my secret garden wasn't going to stay secret for long. Lyla thought I was a staff member. She thought I was Joseph, the guy with the complicated laundry situation. What would happen when she found out I was the man who owned the dirt she was kneeling in? And more importantly, what would my guests do to someone like her? The next morning I woke up before my alarm. Usually, waking up meant a mental checklist of stock markets in Tokyo and London. Today, it meant wondering if the hardware store in town opened at 7 a.m. so I could buy work boots that didn't cost as much as a small car. I raided the back of my closet, pushing past rows of Armani and Tom Ford. I found an old gray t-shirt from a charity 5K run I did 5 years ago, or rather, walked swiftly while checking emails. I found a pair of jeans that were meant for casual Fridays but had never seen a speck of dust. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like a gardener yet. I looked like a billionaire trying to look like a person. I messed up my hair. I skipped shaving. The shadow on my jaw felt rebellious. Beatrice, I said into the intercom on my way out, cancel my morning meetings. Tell the board I have a contagious stomach virus, something unglamorous. They won't ask questions. Sir? Beatrice's voice crackled, dripping with panic. But the gala prep. The caterers are arriving at noon. You need to approve the ice sculptures. You approve them, I said. If it's cold and melts, it's fine. I'll be indisposed. I slipped out the side door again. The air was hotter today, thick with the promise of a storm or just oppressive humidity. When I reached the east garden, Lyla was already there. She was wrestling with a thorny vine that had choked a statue of a cherub. She was wearing a different pair of overalls today, khaki, with a hole in the pocket, and a bandana tied around her unruly hair. You came back, she said without turning around. How did you know it was me? I asked. You walk heavy, she said, snipping a vine. Like you're carrying invisible weights. She turned then, her eyes scanning my outfit. A grin tugged at the corner of her mouth. And look at that. You found jeans. The boss give you a dress-down day? Something like that, I lied. I told him I was sick. Lyla laughed. Playing hooky from the big house. I like it. Grab the shears. This rose bush is fighting back, and I think it's winning. We worked side by side for hours. There is a specific intimacy in manual labor. You don't have to make eye contact to feel connected. You just pass a tool. You lift a branch so the other person can cut. You share the groan when you stand up and your back cracks. Around noon, the sun was brutal. Lyla walked over to a canvas cooler bag she had left in the shade of an oak tree. Lunchtime, she announced. I hope you like turkey because that's all I have. I froze. I hadn't brought anything. Usually, Henri prepared a 3-course lunch that was served to me in the dining room. I forgot to bring food, I admitted, feeling ridiculous. I could buy a restaurant chain, but I couldn't remember to pack a sandwich. Lyla didn't mock me. She just unzipped the bag and pulled out a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. She tore it in half. "Here," she said, handing me the bigger half. "My mom makes them. She thinks I'm too skinny, so she packs enough to feed a linebacker." I took it. It was simple wheat bread, turkey, lettuce, and a smear of mustard. We sat on the stone bench, the same one where my mother used to sit and read Vogue. I took a bite. It was dry. It was plain. It was the best thing I had tasted in years. "So," Lyla said, chewing thoughtfully, "tell me about him." "Cargill." I nearly choked on the turkey. "Who?" "The guy who owns this place. The Wizard of Oz up in the tower." She gestured with her sandwich toward the mansion looming over the trees. "Is he as bad as they say?" My heart hammered against my ribs. "What? What do they say?" Lyla shrugged. "You know, rich guys. They say he's cutthroat, cold, that he bought out that family-owned tech company last year just to dismantle it for parts. My cousin worked there, lost his job. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. I remembered that acquisition. It was a strategic move, a spreadsheet decision. I never thought about the cousins. He has to make tough decisions," I said weakly, defending myself in the third person. "There's tough," Lyla countered, her voice sharpening. "And then there's cruel. You can make money without stepping on people, Joseph. Look at this garden." "The garden?" "Yeah. You don't get roses to bloom by stomping on them. You feed them. You prune them gently. You give them space." She looked at me, her eyes fierce. "People like Cargill. They think they own the sun. They forget that without the dirt, they're nothing." I sat there holding half a turkey sandwich, feeling smaller than I ever had in a boardroom confrontation. "Maybe he's just lost," I suggested quietly. "Maybe he doesn't know how to be anything else." Lyla looked at me, softening slightly. "Maybe, but that's a sad excuse, isn't it? Having $1 billion and being lost? If I had his money, I wouldn't be lost." "What would you do?" I asked. "If you were him?" Lyla smiled, a dreamy look entering her eyes. "I'd buy a huge plot of land. Not for a mansion, for a sanctuary. Rescue dogs, native plants. A community garden where kids could learn to grow their own food. I'd make things grow, Joseph. I wouldn't just hoard numbers in a bank account." She looked at me. "What about you? If you were the boss?" I looked at the dirt under my fingernails. "I think," I said, my voice thick, "I'd do exactly what I'm doing right now." Lyla bumped her shoulder against mine. "Sitting in the dirt, eating a dry sandwich? You have low standards for a billionaire fantasy." "Maybe," I smiled. "Or maybe I just have high standards for company." For a second, the air between us charged. It wasn't just the heat. It was the sudden, terrifying realization that I didn't want this lunch break to end. Ever. The moment shattered with a sound. Beep, beep, beep. A truck was backing up. Lyla and I stood up. Through the gap in the hedges, we could see the main lawn. It was being invaded. White trucks with the logo. Prestige events were rolling onto the grass. Men in headsets were shouting directions. A massive white tent was being erected, the canvas billowing like the sail of a conquering ship. "The circus is coming to town," Lyla murmured, wiping crumbs from her mouth. "The summer gala." "Yeah," I said, my stomach tightening. "I hate these things," she admitted. "I've worked a few of them before. Not as a guest, obviously. Cleaning up afterward. The waste is obscene. Champagne bottles half full, poured into the grass. Food that could feed a shelter thrown in the trash because it sat out for 20 minutes. She looked at me. "Will you be working it?" I have to be there," I said. "It's mandatory." "Me too," she sighed. "The agency called. They need extra hands for perimeter aesthetic maintenance. Basically making sure no dead leaves offend the guests' eyes while they walk in." She turned to me, her expression serious. "Hey, if you're working the party, try to find me. Maybe we can sneak away and eat leftover caviar behind the dumpster." She was joking, but I wasn't. "I will find you," I promised. "But Lyla," I wanted to tell her. I wanted to say, "I'm not Joseph the staffer. I'm Josef Cargill, and I'm sorry about your cousin. And I promise this party won't be a waste," but I couldn't. Not yet. If I told her now, the magic would break. She'd see the suit, not the man. She'd see the enemy. Suddenly, a voice cut through the air like a whip. "You there? In the dirt." We both turned. Standing at the entrance of the garden was a woman. She was tall, blonde, and wearing a headset. She held a clipboard like a weapon. It was Clarissa Van Doren, the lead event planner, a woman I paid an exorbitant amount of money to make my life easy. She marched over to us, her heels sinking into the soft earth, her face twisted in disgust. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, looking at Lyla. "This area is off limits. We need this pathway clear for the overflow bar." Lyla stood her ground. "I'm the gardener. I'm fixing the roses so they don't look dead for your party." Clarissa scoffed. "Well, you look like a mess. And you smell like fertilizer." She waved a manicured hand. "Clear out. We need to set up lighting trusses here. These bushes are in the way." "These bushes are living things," Lyla snapped. "You can't just shove lights on top of them." "I can do whatever I want," Clarissa hissed. "I represent Mr. Cargill, and Mr. Cargill wants perfection. He doesn't want some dirty little girl playing in the mud." I felt the anger rise in my throat, hot and acidic. Mr. Cargill wants perfection. She was using my name to bully her. She was using my power to crush the one real thing on this estate. I stepped forward. "She's doing her job," I said, lowering my voice to a growl. Clarissa turned her cold eyes on me. She didn't recognize me. Why would she? I was unshaven, wearing a charity t-shirt covered in dirt. To her, I was just another laborer. "And who are you?" she sneered. "Another temp? Listen to me. If you talk back, I'll have you both blacklisted from every agency in the city. Now move." I opened my mouth. I was about to say those 3 words that stopped everyone in their tracks. "I am Cargill." But Lyla grabbed my arm. Her grip was strong. She pulled me back. "It's okay, Joseph," she whispered. "Don't. She's not worth losing your job over." She looked at Clarissa. "We're moving. Just be careful with the hydrangeas, please." Lyla started gathering her tools. Her shoulders were slumped. The light in her eyes had dimmed. Clarissa smirked, checking something off her clipboard. "Pathetic," she muttered as she walked away to yell at a lighting technician. I stood there vibrating with rage. I watched Lyla pack her bag. She looked small against the backdrop of the massive white tent rising in the distance. "I hate them," Lyla whispered to me. "Not because they're rich, but because they think they're better." She hoisted her bag onto her shoulder. "I'll see you tomorrow, Joseph," she said, forcing a smile. "Bring your tuxedo t-shirt." She walked away, disappearing down the servants' path. I stayed in the garden. I looked at the spot where Clarissa had stood. I looked at the tent. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. It had been on silent. 47 missed calls from Beatrice. I dialed Beatrice. "Sir," she screamed. "Where have you been?" "The ice sculptures." "Beatrice," I said. My voice was calm, dangerously calm. "Listen to me very carefully." "Yes, sir?" "The gala tomorrow. I want to make a few changes to the guest list." It's a bit late for that, sir." "No," I said, watching the sun set over the garden Lyla had saved. "It's exactly the right time. And Beatrice, tell Clarissa Van Doren that if she touches a single petal in the East Garden, she's fired. Effectively, immediately." I hung up. Lyla thought she was coming to work as invisible help. She had no idea that tomorrow she was going to be the most important person in the room. But first I had to survive the night, and I had to figure out how to tell the woman I was falling for that I was the monster she despised. Have you ever been judged by someone who thought they were better than you just because of their job title? It makes your blood boil, doesn't it? If you're Team Lyla, type respect in the comments below. Let's show the world that manners matter more than money. The tuxedo was midnight blue, Italian silk, custom made in Milan. It fit me like a second skin, but as I buttoned the jacket in front of the full-length mirror, it felt more like a suit of armor, or maybe a straitjacket. I had shaved. The rugged shadow was gone, replaced by the smooth, untouchable jawline of a CEO. I had combed my hair back, taming the chaos. I looked at the reflection. Joseph the gardener was gone. Mr. Cargill had returned, and I hated him. "You look dashing, sir," Beatrice chirped from the doorway, holding a tablet. "The first limousines are pulling up. The governor's here. And the CEO of BlackRock just texted to say he's bringing a +5. Can you believe the audacity?" "Audacity is the currency of the evening, Beatrice," I said, adjusting my cufflinks. They were gold, shaped like lion heads. A gift from my father. "Always be the king of the jungle, Joseph. He never told me the jungle was this lonely." I walked down the grand staircase. The house had been transformed. The marble floors gleamed under the light of 10 crystal chandeliers. The air smelled of expensive lilies and even more expensive perfume. A string quartet was playing something classical and soulless in the foyer. I took a breath, steeling myself. Showtime, I whispered. The lawn was unrecognizable. The white tent glowed like a lantern against the twilight. Inside, 300 people were drinking my champagne and eating tiny crab cakes that cost more than Lyla's weekly paycheck. I moved through the crowd like a ghost. "Josef, darling." A woman in a red dress grabbed my arm. It was Mrs. Vandermeer, a socialite who had been trying to set me up with her daughter for 3 years. "You look tired. Are you working too hard? You need a vacation. Have you tried St. Bart's in July?" "I prefer the backyard, actually," I said stiffly. She laughed, a high tinkling sound. "Oh, you and your jokes. Always so dry." I extricated myself and kept moving. Handshakes, nods, fake smiles. "Great quarter, Cargill. Love what you did with the merger. Is it true you're buying the island next to Branson?" I answered them all on autopilot, but my eyes were scanning the perimeter. I wasn't looking for investors. I was looking for messy chestnut hair. I found her near the champagne tower. She wasn't wearing her overalls. The agency had put her in the standard invisible staff uniform. Black slacks, a crisp white button-down shirt that was too big for her shoulders, and a black apron. Her hair was pulled back so tight it looked painful. She was holding a tray of empty glasses, moving through the crowd with her head down. She looked terrified. My heart clenched. She looked like a bird trapped in a cage of peacocks. I started to move toward her, pushing past a senator who wanted to talk about tax loopholes. But someone got to her first. It was a group of young investment bankers, the future leaders, as they called themselves. They were loud, already drunk, and standing dangerously close to the East Garden entrance, right where Lyla had planted the new hydrangeas yesterday. One of them, a guy named Julian, slicked back hair, suspenders, a laugh that sounded like a bark, was stumbling backward. He stepped right into the flower bed. His heel crushed a white peony. He lost his balance, flailing, and his drink, a sticky red cocktail, went flying. It splashed directly onto Lyla, who was passing by with her tray. The red liquid soaked her white shirt instantly. It dripped down her apron. It looked like a wound. Lyla gasped, dropping the tray. Crash. The sound of breaking crystal silenced the nearby conversations. The string quartet seemed to falter for a beat. Julian regained his balance, brushing off his suit jacket, which didn't have a drop on it. He looked at Lyla with pure annoyance. "Watch where you're going," he snapped. "You nearly ruined a $3,000 suit." Lyla stood there, trembling. Her face was pale. She looked down at the shattered glass, then at the crushed flower bed. I wasn't moving," she said, her voice shaking but audible. "You stepped backward, into the garden." The silence stretched. The crowd turned to watch. This was entertainment now. A servant talking back. Julian blinked, his face flushing red, not with embarrassment, but with anger. "Excuse me?" He laughed, looking around at his friends for support. "Did the help just correct me?" "You stepped on the peony," Lyla said, pointing to the crushed flower under his shoe. "It took 6 months to grow that." Julian looked down at the flower, then kicked it, severing the stem completely. "It's a flower," he scoffed. "Who cares? I'll buy 100 more tomorrow. Hell, I'll buy this whole garden." "You can't buy life," Lyla said. Tears were welling in her eyes, but she didn't back down. "And you should apologize." The crowd gasped. A low murmur rippled through the tent. Julian stepped closer to her, invading her space. He towered over her. "Apologize," he sneered. "To you? Look at you, you're a mess. You're probably just some temp they picked up off the street." He turned to the crowd, raising his arms like a conductor. "Does anyone know who this is?" He shouted mockingly. "Is she the estate manager? The head of security?" Clarissa Van Doren appeared from the shadows, looking horrified. Not for Lyla, but for the scene. "She's nobody," Clarissa hissed, rushing over. "She's just a gardener we hired for perimeter checks." "I'm so sorry, Julian. She's leaving. Right now." "A gardener," Julian howled with laughter. "You hear that, boys? She plays with dirt for a living, and she's telling me about manners." The group of bankers laughed. It was a cruel, sharp sound. Then other guests started to chuckle. It was that nervous, follow-the-leader laughter. They didn't want to be on the outside of the joke. She's just a gardener, someone whispered near me. How quaint. Someone get her a shovel, another voice jeered. Lyla stood alone in the circle of mockery. The red stain on her shirt was spreading. She looked small. She looked defeated. She bent down to pick up a piece of broken glass, her hands shaking so badly she cut her finger. A drop of real blood mixed with the fake red stain. Leave it, Clarissa barked. Security. Escort her out. I felt a coldness settle over me. It wasn't the air conditioning. It was the ice in my veins turning into fire. I had spent my entire adult life playing their game. I had spent my entire adult life nodding at their insults, tolerating their arrogance, pretending that their money made them important. But as I watched Lyla bleed on the floor while they laughed, the game ended. I didn't shout. I didn't run. I walked. I walked with the heavy, deliberate steps of a man who owns the ground beneath his feet. The crowd parted. They sensed the shift in the air. The laughter died down, replaced by a confused silence. Cargill is coming, someone whispered. Oh, good, Julian said, straightening his tie, looking smug. Joseph, you need to teach your staff some respect. This girl, I didn't stop at Julian. I walked right past him. I walked straight to Lyla. I stopped in front of her. She was still crouched on the ground, holding the broken glass. She looked up at me. Her eyes widened. She saw the tuxedo. She saw the cufflinks. She saw the polished shoes. And then she looked at my face. The recognition hit her like a physical slap. Joseph, she whispered. Her voice broke. You're him? I didn't answer her yet. I took off my jacket. My midnight blue Italian silk custom-made jacket. I crouched down. I didn't care about the crease in my trousers. I didn't care about the mud from the flower bed. I wrapped the jacket around her shoulders, covering the red stain, covering the shame they tried to put on her. Then I took the broken glass from her hand. I tossed it onto the grass. I took her bleeding hand in mine. Are you hurt? I asked. My voice was soft, for her ears only. Lyla stared at me, tears spilling over. You lied, she choked out. You're Cargill. I am, I admitted. But right now I'm just the guy who irons his own socks. I stood up, pulling her up with me. I kept her hand firmly in mine. I turned to face the room. 300 people were staring. Beatrice had her hand over her mouth. Clarissa looked like she was about to faint. Julian looked confused. Joseph, Julian said, his nervous laugh returning. What are you doing? She's just the help. I looked at Julian. Then I looked at the crowd. Just the help, I repeated. My voice rang out clear and cold, amplified by the sudden silence of the music. You're right, Julian. She is a gardener. I squeezed Lyla's hand. She spent yesterday on her hands and knees saving the roses you're currently standing near. She knows the name of every plant on this estate. She knows that the soil needs to be fed before it can bloom. I took a step toward Julian. He shrank back. And you? I asked. What do you do, Julian? You move numbers on a screen. You bet on companies failing. You create nothing. You grow nothing. You just consume. I looked around the tent. You all come here to drink my wine and shake my hand because you think I'm powerful. You think wealth is power. I raised Lyla's hand, holding it up like a victory torch. Her dirty fingernails, the Band-Aid on her thumb, the callus on her palm. This, I said, is power. This is the hand that builds the world you live in. Without her, without people like her, you have no food. You have no beauty. You have nothing but your empty bank accounts and your expensive suits. I looked back at Clarissa. You fired her? I asked. Clarissa trembled. I thought, you're right, I said. Someone is getting fired tonight, but it's not her. I pointed to the exit. Everyone out. The crowd murmured, confused. I said, out, I roared. The sound echoed off the tent canvas, terrifying and final. The party is over. Take your tax write-offs and go home. Get off my lawn, and if I see any of you disrespect a member of my staff again, I will buy your company and dissolve it just for sport. Panic ensued. It was a beautiful chaos. Guests scrambling for purses, calling drivers, whispering in shock. Julian was the first to run, his tail between his legs. In 2 minutes, the tent was emptying. I didn't watch them go. I turned back to Lyla. She was standing there, wearing my jacket, looking at me like I was a stranger. And maybe I was. "You're a billionaire," she said, flatly. "Yes," I said. "And you let me call you complicated Joseph and make fun of your shoes." I deserved it. The shoes were ridiculous. She looked at my hand, still holding hers. She didn't pull away, but she didn't squeeze back. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "Was it a game? Undercover boss?" "No," I said desperately. "It was the only time in years I felt real, Lyla. When I was with you, I wasn't an ATM. I was just a guy digging a hole." I looked at her, pleading. "Please don't. Leave. The party is over, but I haven't had dinner yet, and I know a place that serves terrible turkey sandwiches." She stared at me for a long, agonizing moment. The moss-green eyes searched my face, looking for the lie, looking for the trick. Then slowly a corner of her mouth twitched. "I'm out of turkey," she said, "but I have peanut butter." I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding since birth. "Peanut butter sounds perfect," I said. And right there, in the middle of the ruined gala, under the lights of a tent that cost $500,000, the billionaire and the gardener walked away from the crowd, leaving the gold behind to go find something real. The kitchen was quiet, not the ominous silence of an empty museum, but the settling silence of a storm that has passed. The industrial refrigerators hummed. The stainless steel counters reflected the harsh fluorescent lights. I was sitting on a stool, my tuxedo jacket draped over the back of a chair, my tie undone, hanging around my neck. Lyla sat opposite me. She was still wearing my jacket over her stained shirt. She looked tired. Her hair was coming loose from the severe bun, curling around her face in defiant tendrils. Between us sat a jar of crunchy peanut butter, a spoon, and a loaf of Henri's artisanal brioche, because ironically we were out of normal sliced bread. "So," Lyla said, digging the spoon into the jar, "you own the hospital where my nephew got his tonsils out." "I do," I admitted. "And the library where I check out gardening books. My grandfather built that one. And the company that fired my cousin." I flinched. I watched her spread the peanut butter onto the delicate, buttery bread. She did it with aggressive precision. "Lyla, about the acquisition," I started. She held up the spoon. Don't give me the press release, Joseph. I don't want to hear about synergies or restructuring. I saw what it did to his family. They lost their house." She took a bite of the sandwich, chewing slowly, her eyes never leaving mine. "That's why I didn't tell you," I said softly. "Because the moment people hear the name Cargill, they stop seeing a person. They see a villain or a lottery ticket. Yesterday, in the garden, you treated me like a human being. You made fun of my shoes. You shared your lunch. I haven't had that in, I don't even know how long." Lyla swallowed. She looked down at the table. "It was real for me," she whispered. "But for you, it felt like tourism, Joseph. Like you were visiting the simple life for a thrill." "It wasn't a thrill," I insisted, leaning forward. "It was a lifeline. I was drowning, Lyla, until I saw you fighting with that hydrangea." She looked up. Her eyes were glassy. "I want to believe you," she said, "but my life isn't a vacation spot. I scrape by. I worry about rent. I worry about my truck breaking down. You play at being a gardener, but at the end of the day, you can buy a new forest if you ruin this one. I can't." She stood up, sliding my jacket off her shoulders. She folded it neatly despite the red stain on her shirt beneath. "Thank you for defending me tonight," she said. "That was brave, but I think I should go." "Wait," I said, standing up too fast. The stool screeched against the floor. "Lyla, don't go. Not like this, let me drive you. Or have a driver take you." She laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "No drivers, Joseph, no limos. I drove my truck here, and I'll drive it home. It has a busted taillight and smells like mulch, but it's mine." She walked to the door. "I'll see you around, Mr. Cargill." "Joseph," I corrected. She paused at the door, her hand on the frame. She didn't look back. "We'll see." I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the study watching the sun come up over the wreckage of the party on the lawn. By 8 a.m., the internet was on fire. Billionaire meltdown. Josef Cargill ejects 300 guests to defend Mystery Maid, the Cinderella of the East Garden, who is the girl in the stained shirt. There were photos. Blurry, grainy photos taken by guests before they were kicked out. One showed me holding Lyla's hand. Another showed me screaming at Julian. The narrative was spinning out of control. Half the world called me a romantic hero. The other half called me unhinged. But I didn't care about my reputation. I cared about the privacy I had just shattered. At 9 a.m., my phone rang. It wasn't a business line. It was the private number I had given Lyla. I answered. On the first ring. Joseph? Her voice was shaking. There was noise in the background, shouting, camera shutters. Lyla? What's wrong? I can't get out of my driveway, she said, panic rising in her throat. There are people. Cameras. They're banging on my truck window. They're asking if I'm your mistress. They're asking how much you paid me. My blood ran cold. The sharks hadn't just circled me. They had found her. Lock the doors, I commanded, already grabbing my keys. Don't talk to them. Don't look at them. I'm coming. No, she shouted. If you come here, it'll be worse. They'll think it's true. I don't care what they think. I'm not letting them hunt you. Joseph, stop. Her voice cracked. You're making it worse. You're trying to fix it like a CEO. Just stay away. Please. The line went dead. I stood in the middle of my office, phone in hand, paralyzed. I had the power to buy islands. I had the power to crush competitors. But I couldn't protect the one person who mattered because my protection was the very thing that was endangering her. I paced the room. I needed to do something. I couldn't just sit here. I called Beatrice. Find out where Lyla Smith lives, I barked, and send a private security detail. Invisible. I don't want her to see them. Just keep the press off her property. Sir, Beatrice hesitated. We can do that. But Julian's father is on line too. He's threatening to pull his assets from the bank. Let him, I said. And Beatrice? Send a cease and desist to every tabloid running her photo. Use the nuclear option. Slander, harassment, invasion of privacy. Bury them in legal paperwork until they can't breathe. 3 days passed. I respected her wish. I didn't go to her house. But I was miserable. I watched the news like a hawk. The security team reported that the press had thinned out after my lawyers threatened to sue anyone who stepped on her sidewalk. But the damage was done. Lyla hadn't returned to the estate. The east garden was beginning to wilt in the heat. I needed to apologize. And because I was an idiot who had spent too long in a world of transactions, I thought I could apologize with a gift. I remembered her truck, the busted taillight, the rust. I remembered her dream. I'd buy a huge plot of land, a community garden. I made a call. I bought a brand new, heavy-duty pickup truck, forest green, leather seats, and in the glove box, I put the deed to a 10-acre plot of land on the south side of the city, prime real estate that I had been saving for a warehouse. I had it rezoned for agricultural use. I had the truck delivered to her house on a Tuesday morning. I waited by the phone, expecting a call of gratitude, expecting her to say, "Wow, Joseph, you listened." The phone rang at noon. "Hello?" I answered, hopeful. "Come get it," Lyla said. Her voice was ice. "Get what?" "The truck, the deed, all of it. Come get it, or I'm parking it in the middle of the highway and leaving the keys in the ignition." "Lyla," I stammered. I was trying to help. Your truck is falling apart, and the land, it's for your dream, the community garden. You don't get it," she said, and I could hear she was crying now. "You think you can just throw money at the problem and it goes away. You think because you ruined my privacy you can pay me off with a truck? It's not a payoff," I argued. "It's a gift. It's charity," she screamed. "I don't want your charity, Joseph. I wanted a friend. I wanted the guy who helped me with the compost. But that guy doesn't exist, does he? There's only the billionaire who thinks he can solve everything with a checkbook." "I am that guy," I yelled back, frustration boiling over. "I'm both. Why can't I be both?" "Because the billionaire is suffocating the gardener," she said softly. "Please, take the truck back and leave me alone." I drove to her house myself to pick up the truck. Her neighborhood was modest, small bungalows with peeling paint and chain-link fences. My shiny black SUV looked like a spaceship that had crash-landed. I saw the new green truck parked in her driveway. It looked perfect, and it looked completely out of place. Lyla was sitting on her front porch steps, arms crossed, staring at the ground. She looked smaller than I remembered. I got out of the car. I didn't approach her. I stood by the gate. "I'm sorry," I said. She didn't look up. "For which part?" "For thinking I could buy my way out of this," I said. "For not understanding that dignity is worth more than a deed." She looked up then. Her eyes were tired. "You embarrassed me, Joseph. Not at the party. At the party, you were a hero. But sending this truck, that told the whole neighborhood that I'm a charity case, that I need a rich man to save me. I just wanted you to be safe. I admitted. I worry about you driving that old rig. That old rig was bought with money I earned scrubbing floors and weeding gardens, she said proudly. It's a piece of junk, but it's my piece of junk. She stood up and walked to the gate. She handed me the keys to the new truck. Take it. I took the keys. The metal felt cold in my hand. What can I do? I asked, my voice breaking. Tell me what to do. I can't lose you, Lyla. The last few days, the silence is back, and it's louder than ever. She looked at me, searching my face for the truth. You want to fix this? She asked. Yes. Anything. Stop trying to bring me into your world, she said. It doesn't fit me. It hurts me. Then what? If you want to be in my life, Josef, you have to step into mine, and not as a tourist. You have to be willing to get your hands dirty. For real this time. No tuxedo waiting in the wings. I'm willing, I said immediately. She tilted her head. My cousin, the one who lost his job, his roof is leaking. He can't afford a contractor. I'm going over there on Saturday to try and patch it. She looked at my soft, manicured hands. It's hard work. It's dangerous. And nobody is going to applaud you. What time? I asked. Lyla studied me for a second longer. Then, a ghost of a smile appeared. 7 a.m. And Josef? Where are the ugly boots? I watched her walk back into her small house. I looked at the shiny new truck I had bought. I realized then that it was the ugliest thing I had ever seen. I got in, started the engine, and drove it away. I had a date. Not a gala. Not a dinner. I had a date with a leaky roof and a cousin who probably hated my guts. And I was terrified. But for the first time in a week, I was smiling. Saturday morning arrived with a gray sky that threatened rain, which is the last thing you want when you're about to tear shingles off a roof. I didn't take the SUV. I didn't take a town car. I rented a Ford F-150 from a lot near the airport under the name Joe Smith. It smelled like stale cigarettes and pine air freshener. It was perfect. I wore the boots Lyla told me to buy, the ugly ones with the steel toes. I wore jeans that were already starting to fray at the hem, and for the first time in my life I didn't wear a watch. Time didn't matter today. Only the job did. I pulled up to the address Lyla had texted me. It was a small, single-story house in a neighborhood that had seen better days. The paint was peeling. The lawn was overgrown. And there, in the driveway, was Lyla's battered truck. She was leaning against the tailgate, drinking coffee from a thermos. When she saw the rental truck pull up, she straightened. I got out. I felt more nervous than I had before my first IPO. You're on time, she noted, checking her phone. 7 a.m., I said. I brought tools. I gestured to the bed of the rental. I had gone to the hardware store the night before and bought everything the clerk said I might need. Hammers, pry bars, roofing nails, tar paper. Lyla looked in the bed of the truck. She raised an eyebrow at the brand new, shiny tools. Well, she said, at least you came prepared, but don't expect them to stay shiny. I don't, I said. Good, because he's inside. She pointed to the house. His name is Eddie. He's angry, Josef. He's been angry for a year. Don't try to charm him. Just work. Understood. We walked inside. The house smelled of bacon and damp drywall, the smell of a leak that had been ignored for too long because money was tight. In the kitchen, a man was sitting at a small table, feeding a toddler in a high chair. He looked like Lyla. Same dark hair, same stubborn jaw, but his eyes were harder. Tired. Eddie, Lyla said softly. This is the friend I told you about. Joe. Eddie looked up. He scanned me with the suspicion of a man who has been kicked by life one too many times. Joe? He repeated. He didn't stand up. He didn't offer a hand. You know how to do roofing, Joe? I'm a quick learner, I said. Eddie scoffed. Great. A learner. Just what I need. Don't put your foot through my ceiling, all right? I can't afford to fix the inside, too. I'll be careful, I promised. Why are you doing this? Eddie asked, eyes narrowing. Lyla says you're doing it for free. Nobody works for free. What's the angle? I looked at Lyla. She was tense, waiting to see what I would say. I owe Lyla a favor, I said. A big one. Eddie grunted. Must be some favor. All right. Ladder's out back. Don't fall. My insurance lapsed last month. Roofing is brutal. If gardening is a gentle conversation with the earth, roofing is a fist fight with the sky. By 9 a.m. the sun had broken through the clouds and the humidity was suffocating. We were up on the shingles ripping up the rotten wood. The sound was deafening. the screech of nails being pried loose, the thud of old shingles hitting the dumpster below. I was sweating through my shirt in 10 minutes. My hands, unused to the friction, were already blistering inside my gloves. Eddie worked like a machine. He was angry at the roof. He was ripping it apart with a ferocity that spoke volumes. We worked in silence for 2 hours. Then, around 11 a.m., we took a water break. We sat on the ridge of the roof, looking out over the neighborhood. "So," Eddie said, wiping his face with a rag, "what do you do, Joe, when you're not doing favors?" I froze. I took a drink of water, buying time. "I work in management," I said. "Management." Eddie spat the word like a curse. "Figures. You got soft hands." "Yeah," I admitted. "I do." Eddie looked at me. He squinted against the sun. Then he frowned. He tilted his head. "Wait a second," he murmured. He stared harder. "I've seen you," he said. "On TV, or, no, the company newsletter." My heart stopped. Eddie's face went pale, then red. He stood up on the slanted roof, his boots slipping slightly. "Cargill," he whispered. Lyla, who was working on the lower section near the gutter, looked up sharply. "Eddie, wait." "It's him," Eddie shouted, pointing a pry bar at me. "It's Josef Cargill." I stood up slowly, raising my hands. "Eddie, please. Let me explain." "Explain?" Eddie roared. "Explain what? Why you're on my roof. You fired me. You bought Tech Global, stripped the assets, and sent out a mass email telling 300 of us to clear our desks." "I know," I said. "I know that. You took my severance," he yelled, stepping closer. "You cut the pension plan. I have a kid, man. I have a kid and a leaking roof, and I'm delivering pizzas at night because of you." He looked like he was going to swing the pry bar. Lyla scrambled up the roof. "Eddie, stop, he's trying to help." "Help?" Eddie laughed, a jagged, broken sound. "He's not helping. He's mocking me. What is this? A photo op? Where are the cameras, Cargill? Are you going to put this in your annual report? Billionaire helps peasant fix shingle?" "There are no cameras," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline. "Just me." "Get off my roof," Eddie seethed. "Get off my property before I throw you off." I looked at him. I saw the fear beneath the anger, the fear of not being able to provide, the fear I had caused with a signature on a piece of paper. "I'm not leaving," I said. Eddie blinked. "What?" "I'm not leaving until this roof is fixed," I said. "You can yell at me. You can hit me if it makes you feel better. But look at that sky, Eddie. It's going to rain tonight. If I leave, your kid's room gets wet. If I stay, we finish this." I took a step toward him. "I can't give you your job back," I said quietly. "That company is gone. I can't undo the last year. But I am here, right now with a hammer, and I can fix this leak. Let me do the one thing I can actually do." Eddie stood there, chest heaving. He looked at the dark clouds gathering on the horizon. He looked at Lyla, who was pleading with her eyes. He looked at me. He lowered the pry bar. "If you mess this up," he warned, his voice shaking, "if one drop of water gets in my house." "It won't," I promised. Eddie stared at me for a long second. Then he spit on the shingles near my boots. "Grab the tar paper," he ordered, "and don't talk to me." We worked like demons after that. The anger in the air fueled us. I didn't stop for lunch. I didn't stop when I smashed my thumb with the hammer, turning the nail black instantly. I didn't stop when my back muscles seized up in a spasm of agony. I just kept hammering. Thud, thud, thud. With every nail, I thought about the emails Beatrice sent. Terminate, liquidate, downsize. It was so easy to destroy things on a screen. It was so hard to build them in real life. I earned every blister. I welcomed the pain. It felt like payment. By 6 p.m., the last shingle was in place. The first drops of rain started to fall as we climbed down the ladder. We stood in the backyard, covered in grit, tar, and sweat. Eddie looked up at the roof. It was dark gray, solid, and seamless. The rain started to come down harder, tapping against the new shingles. We waited. We listened. No leaks, no drips. Lyla walked over to the cooler and pulled out 3 beers, cheap domestic stuff. She cracked one open and handed it to Eddie. She cracked the second one and handed it to me. I took it. My hand was shaking from exhaustion. Eddie took a long pull of his beer. He wiped his mouth with the back of his dirty hand. He looked at me. "You swing a hammer like a rookie," he said. "I am a rookie," I replied, taking a sip. The cold beer tasted like nectar. "But," Eddie paused. He kicked at a patch of weeds. You didn't quit. I thought you would. When I started yelling, I thought you'd run to your car. I'm done running, I said. Eddie looked at me. The hatred was gone, replaced by a grudging, confused respect. My roof is fixed, he said. That saves me $2,000 I don't have. So, we're square on the labor. But we're not friends, Cargill. I know, I said. I don't expect us to be. Good. He finished his beer in one gulp. I'm gonna go check on my kid. Thanks for the materials. And the sweat. He turned and walked into the house. I stood there in the rain with Lyla. She was looking at me. Her hair was plastered to her forehead. Her t-shirt was soaked. You stayed, she said. I told you, I said, wincing as I shifted my weight. I wanted to be the guy who helps. She walked over to me. She reached out and took my hand, the one with the black thumb and the blisters. She ran her fingers over the rough skin. You're bleeding, she noted. I'm fine. You're a mess, she smiled. It was a real smile. Warm, open. I'm a gardener, I corrected, or a roofer. I'm still deciding. She stepped closer. The rain was falling around us, washing away the dirt of the day. You're Josef, she whispered, and then she kissed me. It wasn't a tentative kiss. It was a claiming. She kissed the billionaire, the roofer, the idiot, and the man who stayed. She kissed me like I was something worth saving. When we pulled apart, I was dizzy. Dinner? I asked. Pizza, she said. Eddie ordered it. He said if you're going to steal his pension, the least he can do is let you eat a slice of pepperoni. I laughed. It hurt my chest, but it felt good. Deal. We sat on the floor of Eddie's living room. Me, Lyla, Eddie, and his wife, Sarah, who looked terrified to have a billionaire on her carpet. We ate pizza out of the box. At first, it was awkward, but then the toddler, a little girl named Mia, waddled over to me. She didn't know I was rich. She just knew I had a shiny watch, which I had put back on. She grabbed my wrist and babbled something incoherent. She likes the gold, Eddie muttered, chewing his crust. She's got expensive taste. Takes after her mother. Sarah slapped his arm. Stop it. I unclasped the watch. It was a Patek Philippe, worth more than the house we were sitting in. I handed it to Mia. Here, I said. It's shiny. You can play with it. Mia squealed and started banging the $50,000 watch against the coffee table. Bang, bang, bang. Sarah gasped. Mr. Cargill, she'll break. It's just a watch, I said, taking a bite of pizza. Let her have fun. I looked at Lyla. She was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. It was soft, it was hopeful, and in that moment, sitting on a stained carpet, eating greasy pizza, listening to a toddler destroy a luxury timepiece, I realized something. I had never been happier. I had spent my life building an empire of silence. But this, the noise, the mess, the pizza, the rain on the roof, this was a symphony. Monday. Morning came, but Mr. Cargill didn't return. Not really. I walked into the Cargill Tower at 9 a.m. I wasn't wearing the steel-toed boots. There are limits to rebellion in a Fortune 500 company, but I wasn't wearing the armor either. No tie, top button undone, sleeves rolled up. The lobby security guard, Ralph, who had opened the door for me for 5 years without me ever learning his name, looked surprised. Good morning, Ralph, I said, stopping at his desk. How's the hip surgery recovery? Going? Ralph dropped his pen. It's good, Mr. Cargill. Better. Thank you for asking. Good. Take an extra hour at lunch today. Rest it. I took the elevator to the top floor. The board of directors was waiting. 12 men and women in gray suits, sitting around a table that cost more than Eddie's house. They looked at me with a mixture of fear and curiosity. They had seen the tabloids. They had seen the gardener girl photos. They expected a PR crisis management meeting. They got a revolution. Sit down, I said, not taking my usual seat at the head of the table. I leaned against the window, looking out at the city. We're making some changes. Regarding the incident at the gala, one board member asked nervously. We have a statement drafted to deny any involvement with the throw it away, I interrupted. We're not denying anything. In fact, we're doubling down. I turned to face them. For too long, this company has been about accumulation. We buy, we strip, we sell, we hoard. I paused. I'm bored of it. Silence. You could hear a pin drop on the plush carpet. We have a plot of land on the south side, I continued. 10 acres, warehouse district. It's currently sitting empty, waiting for the market to turn. Yes, The CFO nodded. Strategic hold. Not anymore. Effective immediately, that land is being transferred to a new non-profit trust. The Cargill Community Roots Initiative. Roots? Someone scoffed. Joseph, we're a tech and finance conglomerate. We don't do agriculture. We do now, I said. And we're not just giving money. We're giving time. Every employee in this building gets 4 paid hours a week to volunteer there, including all of you. The board members looked at each other, horrified. You want us to garden? I want you to touch the ground, I said, thinking of Lyla's hands. I want you to remember that the world exists outside of spreadsheets, and if you don't like it, well, I hear our competitors are hiring, but I bet their coffee isn't as good. I walked out of the meeting. Beatrice was waiting in the hall, a terrified smile on her face. Did you just fire the board? She whispered. No, I smiled. I just planted some seeds. Let's see what grows. Building a garden is harder than building a skyscraper. A skyscraper just needs physics. A garden needs patience. For the next 6 months, I lived a double life. From 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., I ran a global empire, steering it slowly but surely toward ethical investments. From 5 p.m. to sunset, I was at the South Side lot. Lyla was the boss there. She wore a hard hat over her bandana. She carried a clipboard that was actually used for work, unlike Clarissa's. She directed volunteers, a mix of my terrified executives in designer loafers and neighborhood kids in sneakers. We broke up the concrete. That was the hardest part. Jackhammers, sweat, dust. I watched Lyla work. She was fierce. She was tireless. One afternoon I was struggling with a wheelbarrow full of rubble. Lift with your legs, Cargill, she shouted from across the lot. Don't throw your back out or the stock market will crash. The volunteers laughed. Even my CFO cracked a smile. I dumped the rubble and wiped my forehead. She walked over to me, holding a bottle of water. You're getting better at that, she admitted. I have a good teacher, I said. She looked around the lot. It was chaos, but green shoots were starting to appear. Raised beds were built. Trees were planted. It was coming alive. You did this, she said softly. You really did it. We did it, I corrected. I just signed the checks. You gave it a soul. I took her hand. It was rough, calloused, and covered in dirt. Lyla, I said, I have a question. If it's about the irrigation system, the answer is yes, we need more pressure. It's not about irrigation. I reached into my pocket. No Patek Philippe this time. Just a simple box. I didn't kneel. The ground was muddy and she would have yelled at me for being dramatic. I just looked her in the eye. I don't want to just build this garden with you, I said. I want to build everything with you. I want to wake up every day and wonder what you're going to teach me. I want to be the guy who irons your socks. Lyla laughed, tears filling her eyes. I don't iron my socks, Joseph. Then I'll just wash them. Marry me, Lyla. Make me honest. She looked at the ring. It wasn't a diamond. It was an emerald, deep green like the moss in the East Garden. You're crazy, she whispered. I'm in love, I said. Same thing. Yes, she said. Yes, you idiot, yes. She kissed me, and the whole construction crew cheered. Even the CFO clapped. A year later, the invitation didn't say, Mr. Cargill invites you. It said, the community invites you. We held the summer gala at the Southside Garden. There was no tent. Just strings of lights hung between the young oak trees. There were no crab cakes. There was a potluck buffet made by the neighborhood families, empanadas, lasagna, barbecue. And the guest list was different. Yes, the governor was there. Yes, the future leaders were there. Julian had been fired, but the others were trying to reform. But so was Eddie, who was now the facility manager of the garden. So was Sarah. So was Ralph, the security guard. I wore a suit, but no tie. Lyla wore a dress. It was green, flowy, and simple. She looked like a dryad who had stepped out of the trees. She also wore her boots underneath. Because heels sink in the mud, Joseph, it's just physics. The press was there, of course. But the narrative had changed. They weren't looking for scandal anymore. They were looking for the miracle. A young reporter, microphone in hand, cornered us near the tomato patch. Napoleon the squirrel's descendants were still a problem even here. Mr. Cargill, the reporter called out. This transformation is incredible. You've changed the entire corporate culture. You've revitalized this neighborhood. How do you define your success? I looked at the garden. I saw children chasing fireflies. I saw bankers sitting on benches talking to retired mechanics. I saw Eddie laughing with a CEO. Success isn't what you hoard, I said into the microphone. It's what you share. The reporter turned to Lyla. She looked a bit nervous, but she held her head high. And Mrs. Cargill? The reporter asked. Or should I say, the brains behind the operation. The world is dying to know. What is your official title? Are you the director of philanthropy? The vice president of sustainability? The crowd quieted down. They remembered the last time someone asked who she was. They remembered the laughter, the just a gardener insult. Lyla looked at me. She smiled. It was the smile from that first day in the dirt, mischievous, grounded, and free. She looked back at the reporter. Oh, I don't have a fancy title, she said. She reached out and plucked a ripe tomato from the vine, tossing it gently in her hand. I plant seeds. I pull weeds. I make sure things grow. She took my hand, intertwining her dirty fingers with mine. I'm just a gardener, she said proudly. And that's the most important job in the world. The crowd didn't laugh this time. They cheered. They say money can't buy happiness. And they're right. But it can buy a lot of manure. And if you have the right partner, and you're willing to get your hands dirty, you can turn that manure into something beautiful. I still have the mansion, but we don't live there. We turned it into a retreat center for burnt-out social workers and teachers. We live in a small house near the community garden. It has a leaky faucet that I'm learning to fix. Eddie says I'm improving. Every morning, I wake up and look at Lyla. She's usually already awake, planning her war against the slugs or sketching a new layout for the pumpkin patch. I look at her, and I remember the man I used to be, the man in the glass tower, the man who was cold, and I thank God for the day I stepped on her mint plant. So, the next time you see someone in dirty clothes working with their hands, unnoticed and ignored, don't look away, don't laugh, take a closer look. You might just be looking at the person who can save your life. And that is the story of how a gardener planted a heart in a tin man. I hope this story reminded you that worth is not net worth. If you made it to the end, I have one favor to ask. Not for me, but for the Lylas in your life. Go out this week and plant something. A flower, a tree, or just kindness. Type "I will grow" in the comments if you're ready to start your own garden of truth. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell because we have so many more stories to tell. Until next time, keep digging.